And that's a resource available to help you as prompts to run your webinar or classroom sessions when you're training the students. We create really awesome e-learning resources these days. These are interactive, narrated, and if you pair them with a suitable LMS, these will actually allow you to track engagement with the course. So you can see some little blue ticks there, and that means the student has completed that section and the system has recorded that the student has completed that section of the e-learning resource. So if you're delivering training in a mixed model, so some face-to-face and some self-paced remote type learning, or just a purely online course, it's now really essential that you have ways to demonstrate that students have engaged and studied the learning content. So the days being able to put a PDF as a link on your website or in your LMS and saying download that and read it, those are gone. That's not sufficient. You have to be able to prove that the students have read the content and engaged with it. And so if you do it with an e-learning like this, you're able to track engagement with all the course content, the amount of time they've actually spent on it, and whether they've completed the formative activities and the results of their formative activities. And you can export all of that into a report, and that forms that really crucial evidence that you can show your auditor at audit. As I've said, we do a lot of formative learning activities as well. So this follows that tell, show, do learning format. So we tell the student what to do, show them how to do it, and then finally we get them to do it. So they do activities or answer questions. Might be multiple choice, a true, false, a short answer, in order to just demonstrate and practice those skills and knowledge they've been learning. We also have a number of simulated business websites. So this is Bounce Fitness, which is one of our most developed ones. It's about 8 years and several thousand hours of work have gone into it. And so this is full of all sorts of workplace forms, templates, policies, procedures, case studies, scenarios, meeting minutes, financial records, HR disputes, and many other things that you might need to support your learning or assessment processes. A lot of units do assume that students have access to a workplace, and it will say, go and find that document. But the reality is a lot of students are studying to get the job. So they have no way to actually complete that assessment without some kind of simulated resource to access. And so we provide that with our training resources, one login for all students. So you can basically access what you need there to complete assessments or learning activities. Moving on to our assessment and mapping. We try to set really clear, comprehensive assessment benchmarks. So we set a clear expectation of what competency looks like for that task or activity. We do use some model answers where that's appropriate as well, but the main thing is we're really specific. So a lot of writers do fall into the trap of saying a student could do this or should do this. And the problem with that is it opens a door. So when someone's assessing if the student doesn't do that, well, is that still compliant? Because it only says they should do that. It's not really required. But if you say the student must do this, then that's specific. And so you say student responses may vary, but they must demonstrate at least 3 of these things in their response. Next, we map everything to everything. In this case, this is the green text up here, so we're mapping this unit back to specific knowledge evidence requirements. So that's important for a few processes. So one is your validation process. So when you're validating that training resource, you can look at the assessment and say, okay, well, it's meant to address this, and then you pull up your unit requirements and you can compare it immediately and just see if you're happy with the task addresses the unit requirement. It's really important for contextualization of training resources. So if you want to adjust this task, change the context, the terminology or something, you can refer back to that unit requirement and just make sure the task still addresses the unit. It's really good when you're in a high pressure situation, like you're in an audit, an auditor is asking you where this is, how do you do this? It's another piece of information you have available to you at your fingertips, so you can very quickly answer their questions. And finally, it's helpful for formulating your training plans as well. We also map our assessments to our learning resources, and this is something a lot of resource publishers don't do. The reasons we do it, again, it helps to demonstrate volume of learning, so you can show that you've provided information to the student before they've completed this assessment. It's there in the learner resource. It helps you to create training plans. So if you plan to do this assessment in the classroom next week, you know you've got to tell the student to study certain sections of the learner resource before then, so they're ready to go for the assessment. Again, it helps with contextualization. So if you adjust this answer here, you've got to go to the learner resource and adjust the information to make sure it matches so that students are able to read the learner resource and complete the assessment and there's no mismatch. And finally, very good if you're assessing the student submissions. Maybe the student's not yet competent on that first attempt. You can very quickly and easily say, you need to go back and read through this part of the learner resource again, and then reconsider your submission here and send it back to me for another attempt. And you don't have to spend 5 years learning every page of your learner resource off by heart. You can give someone this marking guide and they can very quickly and effectively start providing that feedback to their students because it's all mapped out there for them to work with. We also provide master mapping documents. So these are the Excel files. So one of the big things we do, which again, I don't think many others do, is we map to our candidate instructions. So that proves that we've provided instruction to the student on how to complete the assessment, as well as doing sort of the more standard mapping to your assessments, your observation forms, but we also map to any template or evidence that needs to be supplied there as well as part of that assessment. We also map our learner resources quite extensively, and we started doing this a number of years ago. And so we map our unit requirements to our learner resource, our learning activity booklet, and our PowerPoint. And again, that's so you can prove that you provided sufficient volume of learning and information to the student to study and those do activities, the actually demonstrating skills prior to assessment in the learning activity booklet. And so there's a complete map there to show where everything is done. And finally, we supply these to our all of our clients. So our subject matter expert validation acceptance certificate and the quality and compliance acceptance certificate. So when we finish development, that goes with the training resources that are delivered to all of our clients. So coming back to contextualization, this is probably the number one non-compliance that we see in the audit report sent back to us for rectification. And it's not always something we can really help with because it's often entirely specific to that RTO. So it is a requirement, and some things you'll need to consider are whether the resources are appropriate to the AQF level, whether they are appropriate to the industry context, have the right terminology and imagery, whether they meet the LLM needs of the students, whether the student cohort has any other special requirements. For instance, maybe you're delivering training to the employees of a certain organization, and that organization wants everything done in the specific context of that organization's policies and procedures and processes. You'll also need to consider whether the resources match up with your training methods and planned delivery style. I'm surprised I have to say this, but it's a good idea to brand your resources and put some contact details for your RTO there, because we get a lot of confused students calling us asking for help. And when we say we're actually just a resource developer, you need to speak to your RTO. They can't actually name the RTO they're studying with. So it's a good idea just to put logos in the front cover, some contact details throughout the resources, and some prompts for where to go to get support during their training. And basically everything in your training resources has to match up with your training and assessment strategy. So common things we can see are people, like we might have a process that describes an online assessment process for how the student should be doing that assessment online, and the RTO is delivering it as an apprenticeship. So the instructions in the resource don't match up with how they deliver the training. And so those things you have to look out for. If you're purchasing off the shelf, or even taking a unit that you're using in-house and using it in a different context. So a great example of that is CHC Div 001, which is the bane of our existence. It's packaged into everything. So there's 107 courses at the moment, and there's another 50 or so superseded ones that it was in. And so that covers everything from a Cert 2 to advanced diploma qualification. And also covers a huge range of industries, from massage to fire systems to creative to nursing, retail, and so many others. And so that unit packaged into a Cert 2 retail is going to look quite different in expectations and the comprehensiveness of training compared to an advanced diploma in creative industries, for example. So that unit might have to be adjusted and recontextualized to suit different training contexts and different courses you deliver that in. The good news is AI is really good at recontextualizing content. So you can feed sections of your content into it, ask it to adjust the context, change the instructions, change the industry, and so on. And it's very effective at doing that kind of stuff. So I'll finish up. We're nearly at the end now. If that does sound too hard, and it is a huge amount of work, come and speak to us. It's a lot easier to start with a really robust training resource and adapt it and contextualize it to what you want. It will save you a considerable amount of work to do that. Like, I'm someone who pays the bills, and I'll tell you that $500 these days, you'd be lucky to get a day of labor. But you can get a complete training resource that has taken 6 to 8 weeks of work with AI support to create. I do see a number of small resource developers around, a lot of custom development type stuff, and I'd really question how they're able to produce a high quality training resource in often just a couple of days of work. And I'd really wonder what is being sacrificed in that development process to produce a training resource in that little time. So whether it's the breadth and depth of the learning content, the quality of the assessment, the quality assurance processes and checks, mapping of the documents, I think something has got to be cut to produce that quickly. And so a package from us is quite comprehensive. So it's a full set of training and assessment resources, including the simulated business access. And we do now have e-learning resources available for our training resources. So it's an optional extra you can add on to your package, which, as I've said, I think it's really required for online or blended delivery models. And if you take delivery via eSchool to LMS, we've now also converted our assessments into e-assessments. So you can get the unit set up, ready to use with e-assessments that capture all of your evidence in digital format through the LMS. Basically for no extra cost if you buy the complete package with e-learning. And so as a bit of a thank you for your attendance today, I'm happy to offer $500 off any complete qualification packages or any 10 or more units you purchase from our catalog. And so the resources are pretty much ready to go except for your contextualization. So we do provide the compliance guarantee. You can train unlimited students. There's no ongoing fees for the lifetime of the unit code. You will receive any quality and compliance improvements we do free of charge. You can edit the resources for your contextualization and compliance requirements. And as I said, we can deliver everything set up and ready to go through eSchool LMS if you're subscribed to that platform as well. And I'm happy to send through full unit samples so you can do your own validation and quality checks to make sure everything aligns with your expectations before you purchase as well. So that